Easily accessible by both Interstate 195 and the New Jersey Turnpike, Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson Township, New Jersey is a top tourist attraction for people living in both Philadelphia and New York City, the biggest and most populated cities in America.
One of the most popular roller coasters at Six Flags Great Adventure today is Batman and Robin the Chiller, located here in a high-traffic area just to the right of the main entrance.
Right across from there, the family bumper cars.
Many guests may not realize it, but right behind the bumper cars in 1984, this very spot, about the area of this landscaping here, was ground zero for the most unspeakable tragedy, the fire in the Haunted Castle.
The fire in the Haunted Castle and the events of May 11, 1984 that took 8 young lives have long been widely misunderstood. A complex tale of mysteries and controversies that begins over 30 years ago and continues to this day.
Join me, Peter Smith, as I revisit the Haunted Castle in an attempt to finally put to bed the questions that have cast a long shadow in the 20 years since the fire.
See rare photos and videos that have never before been widely seen that truly put you in the belly of the beast. Experience a unique 3D replica of the Haunted Castle's interior and tour its halls again in virtual reality.
Hear accounts from the sole survivor who speaks out now for the first time, and hear why she is outraged about how the memory of the 8 dead is being preserved here at Six Flags Great Adventure.
When I was a kid growing up here in Seaside Heights, there was a haunted house on the Casino Pier right here. A few years later, the same owners put a bigger twin of this place at Great Adventure. All that changed was the name. For here it had been Doorway to Hell.
The idea for Great Adventure was conceived in the 1960s as a brainchild of New York City restaurateur and Warner Brothers' grandson, Warner LeRoy, whose father had been the producer of The Wizard of Oz. Giant theme parks were being built all over the country, leading the way, Six Flags. Attempting to duplicate the success and popularity, LeRoy envisioned a theme park for the Northeast to service his beloved New York City. Warner LeRoy eyed the Switlick Farm along the Prospertown Lake in Jackson Township, New Jersey, as a location for his Northeast theme park. The 2,000 acres were geographically desirable given their position near the highways and populations of the nearby cities. The Switlicks sold their beloved farm believing that what would be built would be a drive-through wild animal preserve. But that was only half of the idea. LeRoy wanted a huge theme park and nothing would stand in his way, not even lawsuits filed by the Switlicks to stop him. LeRoy prevailed, and on July 4th, 1974, Great Adventure Theme Park and Drive-Thru Safari opened to incredible crowds and instant popularity. The park became so successful that it became difficult to operate. Within 3 years, LeRoy sold operations of his Great Adventure to one of the biggest in the industry, Six Flags. The new company brought big ideas and new attractions like the wooden Rolling Thunder on the left side of the park, and the shiny steel lightning loops on the right side. But these would have to be paid for, so the season would need to be extended into October, and what better for October than a haunted house? Six Flags needed to look only to the Casino Pier in nearby Seaside Heights to find their haunted house. Here, George Mahana and his sons had built and then successfully and profitably operated since 1976 the Doorway to Hell, a dark, twisting maze filled with costumed ghouls jumping out at terrified guests. The Mahanas wanted to expand and could do so cheaply, easily, and quickly. They were soon contracted to put a similar attraction on the property of Great Adventure, 35 miles to the west. A Mahana castle was built mainly of retired highway trailers that were placed side by side and then tied and aligned together. Holes were cut in the sides at strategic spots to allow the flow of a 2x4 and plywood maze that seemed like different rooms, but was actually one continuous walkway from the main entrance to the main exit. To disguise the trailers, the Mahanas would build a castle facade, a false front also made of 2x4s and plywood that were sprayed with polyurethane foam and then painted, giving the illusion of a substantial building. A small portable Mahana castle served the park during the October 1978 season, but after that ended, construction began on a bigger place, a more permanent one, a larger twin of the Doorway to Hell, but the name was changed for Great Adventure. It would be the Haunted Castle.
The new Haunted Castle would be bigger and more elaborate than any previous Mahana creation, with twin mazes, mirror images of each other that could accommodate twice as many guests at the same time. Six Flags chose a highly visible location for the castle, just to the right of the main ticket booth.
Normally, plans for such a building would go in front of the local planning board, but this step was not taken. Likewise, a building permit was not issued.
The then Jackson Township building inspector did know the Haunted Castle was being built, but had determined that since it was made of trailers without a permanent foundation, it did not need a permit, and therefore would not be subject to the strict BOCA building codes that had recently been adopted in Jackson Township. Had the Haunted Castle's building methods and materials been compared to the code, it would not have passed inspection. The Haunted Castle opened in the spring of 1979 and was popular, even though serious problems had to be resolved.
At first, the trailers had no air conditioning and became so unbearably hot that patrons and employees were fainting at frightening rates. Right before the beginning of the summer, air conditioning was retrofitted into the design by the way of holes cut in the floor and then covered with metal grates, as illustrated here. These would serve as inflow and outflow ducts to the compressors located outside. Another problem was the wall at the end of the strobe hall. Because of the flashing light and disorienting atmosphere, people were crashing into the wall and becoming injured. The solution was to place a large piece of polyurethane foam at the end of the hall to serve as a crash pad, but this would later be found to be a huge mistake, as the highly flammable material would play a huge role in the ultimate fate of the Haunted Castle. The original design of the Haunted Castle had only 2 emergency doors in each side of the mazes, one here by the strobe room and another in the second-to-last trailer by the caves. Employees complained that these were not nearly enough, and even though they knew the castle well, they had trouble getting out or maneuvering through in a hurry. The area of greatest concern was between the Blacklight Hunchback Station, past Phantom, and onto the strobe door, a long, twisting stretch of distance where there was no clear line of sight to an exit. The employees also complained that they were sitting targets for the increasingly violent customers, while at the Hunchback, Blacklight, and Phantom hiding stations, where the only way in and out was through the crowd. They wanted better exits and an easier way to get from place to place.
That July, a safety expert named J.P. Allison toured the park and would later issue a report outlining suggestions as minimums for life safety in the Haunted Castle. Kathy DeFusco, the lead actress in 1979 and 1980, received a copy of the Allison report outlining a laundry list of upgrades. Kathy remembers that some, but not all of the suggestions were made prior to the 1980 opening day.
Most meaningful to the employees was the redesign of Butcher, shown here, and Phantom behind it. Now a small hole cut in the wall connected the pair, and the employees in both could easily get to the control room, and a new emergency door there. Also, a small hatch door was cut into the wall behind Phantom, as illustrated here in dark red on the left. Phantom now open to the strobe emergency door. Kathy DeFusco remembers that the railings were lowered in front of both Butcher and Phantom to allow the actor to lead the patrons to the new emergency doors if necessary.
Butcher and Phantom now became emergency egress accesses.
J.P. Allison had suggested an additional emergency exit behind the Blacklight Hunchback actor hiding station, but the idea was rejected. It would have opened out into the facade and into the moat and been aesthetically unpleasing. The actors just weren't placed in this spot any longer, a big mistake because this employee was critical in directing patrons and to discourage people from hanging out. Those who would later be found dead would be found just a few feet